You know, when we look at a child in his or her eyes, we can't help but to smile and to rejoice with them, because we could see the sparkle in their eyes. We could see that twinkle in their eyes. And it's such a beautiful thing because it's a reflection of what they are and who they are inside. It's this sense of innocence and of purity, of causeless joy, of unconditional love, of vitality, of curiosity, of playfulness that we can see. People say that the eyes are a window to a person's soul, and it's so true. Because when we see a child and look at his or her eyes, we can see that light, that radiance, and that love that shines forth through their eyes. But unfortunately, as adults, when we look at each other in the eyes, that light has become dim over time. And it's because we have allowed life circumstances in the past to allow us to become jaded, to have chips on our shoulders. We've allowed past hurts and past pains to harbor resentment within our hearts. And when we have resentments that we harbor, that we cling on to, and essentially a sense of unforgiveness, it eats away at who we are. It breaks us down inside. It's essentially when we harbor resentment, when we are not willing to let go of things in the past, we are essentially holding on to hot coals, harming ourselves in the process, and refusing to let go, to receive the blessings in life that God has intended for us. When we harbor unforgiveness, it's essentially drinking poison, harming ourselves, and expecting the person that has offended us to die, when we ourselves are dying each and every day. See, when we have a spirit of unforgiveness, it weakens our immune system. It robs us of our joy. It robs us of our youth. It causes us to age. Our immune systems break down. And physically, emotionally, and spiritually, it causes us harm. So how do we reclaim our joy? How do we reclaim our enthusiasm in life? The answer is found in forgiveness. What is forgiveness? Forgiveness is the intentional and voluntary process in which the person who's been harmed, who's been hurt, who's been offended, willingly gives up his or her right to feel like a victim, and instead chooses to live victoriously, chooses to rise above it. Forgiveness is when the person chooses to shift and adjust his or her perspective and attitude from a negative emotion, something that's based off of vengeance, and chooses to rise above to a greater standard, greater capacity to love, greater willingness to love and to bless. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's not pretending that something did not take place. Forgiveness is not condoning, which is essentially saying that the offender had the right to do what they did. Forgiveness is not justifying. It's not excusing the behavior of what had happened. Forgiving is an active, conscious, willing, intentional act in which the person chooses to love the other person and ultimately love him or herself. See, forgiveness is one of the greatest acts of love. It takes a man or a woman of a certain caliber to be able to admit fault, to be able to say, I'm sorry. It takes a certain degree of love and humility to be able to say, I'm sorry. But it takes a giant leap of love and humility and faith to not only forgive the offender, forgive the other person, but to forgive yourself in the process, thereby reconciling the relationship. Forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. Instead, forgiveness is a sign of strength. For when we forgive others, we don't do it just for them. We also do it for ourselves, because we realize that in forgiveness, there's a sense of liberty. There's a sense of liberation. There's a sense of freedom that we can move on and not live in the past, but move towards the present and then live joyfully in the future. One of the best analogies and definitions that I've heard about forgiveness is from a teacher that asked his classroom, what is forgiveness? And then a little girl raises her hand and says, forgiveness is that wonderful smell that a flower gives when it is being crushed. Forgiveness is that wonderful smell, that wonderful scent, that fragrance, that aroma when the flower is being crushed. And likewise, when we forgive, we emit, we unleash, we release this beautiful fragrance unto other people. That's why it said, consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face all types of trials and tribulations and obstacles and struggles. Because you know that through it all, there is an opportunity to bless. There's an opportunity to bless yourself. There's opportunity to grow from it. There's opportunity to bless other people. Because what a great testimony it is when we choose to forgive other people. What a great opportunity it is to grow when we've been wronged and yet choose to forgive. Obviously, it's not easy to forgive. If it were, everybody would do it. But the rewards and the benefits and the advantages and the blessings when we forgive others is tremendous. A few years back, I was in a business partnership with somebody that I thought I could trust at the time. His company was in debt, but he had some great ideas and great synergies and potential clients. And I thought that my business and his business would be able to experience some synergy if we came together. So the agreement was that my company would buy out the assets of his company and not the liabilities. Over the course of a year and a half, there's some miscommunication and there's some things and words that were spoken, and we end up in a lawsuit. And over the year and a half, I end up losing over 6 figures of income. At that time, this would be somebody that I would say I had a hard time forgiving. And I have to be honest, because it was not easy, because I thought about it and I looked at it from multiple angles, and I said, how could somebody, knowing that I had the intention to help them, knowing that I had the intention to bless them, knowing that I had the intention to bring the companies together and do the best that I could, put me in such a situation? How could somebody come and steal literally money from my family and take money that I would be paying for my kids' diapers, for meals, for our travel? How would somebody take that from me? And so I struggled with it for about a year and a half, knowing very well that I should forgive and let go. I chose to hold on to those hot coals. I chose to drink that poison within my system. It affected my judgment. It affected my relationships. It affected my business decisions. It affected the way that I operated and did things. Until I decided one day to meet up and reconcile, and to start by taking responsibility and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I've done and how you feel that I've wronged you, and I didn't feel that way, but obviously I did. I'm taking responsibility. Will you forgive me? And in return, his response was beautiful. It was of the same. It was I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? And we set aside the differences. We set aside the attorneys that were going after each other, and we just decided to let go. We decided to let go and bless each other. You see, when we choose to harbor resentment and there's a spirit of unforgiveness, we shrink and we become small. But when we encounter times where we've been challenged and pushed, we go through trials where we are wrestling with certain things, we've been hurt, we've been offended, and instead of shrinking, instead of getting angry, instead of harboring resentment, we choose to let go and to bless and to serve others at a higher level of love, we expand. And when we expand, our opportunities also expand. When we expand, our perspectives also shift. When we expand, we live at a higher frequency and a greater capacity to love and to serve and to testify to who God is and his goodness in our life. Forgiveness liberates our soul. It removes the fear and the hindrance and the blockage in our lives. It's one of the world's greatest weapons. It's one of the world's greatest expressions of love is when we who have been hurt choose to forgive other people who have hurt us. And so my encouragement today is, will you search your heart? Will you introspect? Will you look within your life, with your thought process and in your past, where there may be areas that you're harboring resentment, you're not letting go, you're not choosing to forgive. It may be your spouse. It may be an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend or your ex-spouse. It may be a business partner. It may be a coworker. It may be your child. It may be somebody who you don't know, a stranger who's robbed you of something, robbed you of your innocence. It may be ourselves. Won't we choose this gift and this blessing of forgiveness today? Won't we choose to release ourselves from this bondage, from this prison that we've created in our mind because we've chosen not to forgive? My encouragement is that if we want to rise to a new level, if we want to increase our capacity to love ourselves and to love others around us, we have to choose to forgive. We have to let go and let God. We have to let go of the past hurts so that we can experience the present and the future blessings. You see, forgiveness is not something that we do once. It's not one act that we choose at one given moment and say, okay, I forgive. Forgiveness is a lifestyle. Forgiveness is something that happens time and time again. We can't just forgive somebody or forgive ourselves for one split moment. It's something that we choose consciously day in and day out. It's an attitude. And when we choose forgiveness as an attitude, as a lifestyle, when we choose forgiveness, we remove the hindrances in our lives. When we choose forgiveness, we remove the block, the emotional block, the physical block, the spiritual block that is currently in our lives. And we open the doors for abundance. Because I could assure you, when you choose to forgive, you'll see life's opportunities rushing into your life. You'll see life's blessing rushing into your life. You'll see an abundance and experience an amazing plethora of love. So with that, when we've been wronged, if we've been wronged, let's choose to rise above and forgive. God bless.